keep your mic on mute. So basically, we started off with this concept of why we need to study macroeconomics. The reason is the way we are trying to understand demand management is like what I was trying to argue is you have demand and supply of Apple. Likewise, if I aggregate everything in the economy, starting from goods and services, and I also gave you the example of goods. The goods would be merchandise items, which are tangible in nature. For instance, if I'm talking about automobile manufacturing units, or for that matter, uh, plastic cups manufacturing units. So these are all example of goods. Services would be like we use bank, we use university, we use telephone, we use electricity. So these are all part of the services sector. So if I were to include and add up all the goods and services, something that I get is what I'm calling as national income or GDP. So now we said that in the demand side of the GDP, uh, there are few components. Like I mentioned you that this is the most important component, which is my consumption expenditure. This is the private consumption expenditure. Then I have private investment expenditure, government expenditure, export and import. And what are the things that we discuss? Sorry, I thought that uh, uh, so anyway, so what we were discussing in the previous class, we were discussing this whole idea of how to manage your output gap, because what is the output gap? It is again the
Sir,
yeah.
sorry to disturb. Abhishek wants to be.
If I look into the demand side component of output, now what are the things which are there in the demand side component? As you can see that what we have is y equal to c plus I plus g plus x minus m. Now I said that when we are talking about the demand side component, this is the most important component, which is taking value between 62 to 66% of the national income. Then I have private investment expenditure. So these are the expenditure which are undertaken by the corporate houses. For instance, if Reliance is investing to expand its geo business, that would be part of private investment expenditure. Then you have government investment expenditure, where basically the government is spending money to build new road, hospitals, education systems, or for that matter, some services, for instance, defense. Now, one of the questions which was asked in the previous class is, well, the government is also taxing us, and therefore it is charging some, in a way, price. Now, the way to look into that is if I'm looking into the government expenditure, you know, the difference is the government is actually using that tax to build various facilities, be it school, be it college, be it uh, defense system, so on and so forth. But the government typically is either charging very low price or no price at all if you were to use those goods and services which are being provided by the government. I think now this clarify your doubt, because the difference between if a private, let's say Larsen and Toubro, is building a flat, you know, so or Godrej properties, these are all private corporate sectors. They are building some housing or flats. Now, for you to buy flats from Godrej property, you need to pay money, right? But if you are a government, as you know that the government is also providing houses to all the poor rural household. So that comes free of cost. Of course, the government is charging tax, but the government is not charging you the price for using those goods and services which it is providing. So I hope the distinction is now clear as the difference between the price charged by the private investment or the corporate guys vis-a-vis the government. And therefore, we call the government as a welfare state because the government is using this money for providing goods and services. And if you were to use those goods and services, so what is the key word here? If you are if you are going to use the goods and services, then basically you are not going to pay any price. So if I'm using the goods and services, I'm not going to pay the price or maybe pay price which is much less. Okay, is it clear? Okay. So that is something that we are discussing now. Uh, then I think we were uh, we 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 are about to talk about what are the way we can control the output gap. Because that is more important. We wanted to know. So in this case, what we did in the previous class, I was drawing your the demand curve of output, and also I had the supply curve of output. And what I have over here is the time, and what I have here is my GDP or the national income. Now, let's say that we are in this particular year, which happens to be a good year. Let's say this is year 2006, and if you look into the data, you will find that 2006, 5, 4, these are the period of high growth period in the context of Indian economy. So if my demand, again, this is my demand side, and if the demand is uh, if my demand, so my demand is here is y equal to c plus I plus g plus x minus m. Now if I'm here, so basically it is saying my demand, let's try to call this as yd is greater than ys, where ys is equal to the ability of any economy to supply at any given point of time. So if this is the case, what we are saying is inflation. Now in the previous class I said that it is not possible for us to change the supply in the short run, and therefore you see this. If I go back to this diagram, you see that the supply curve is a steadily increasing upward sloping line. It's not changing. The supply curve is not changing like the demand curve, and the reason for that to happen is in the short run supply of output is given, and we also discussed that why is it that in the short run supply of output is given. The reason being, just try to think of this formula. Y is a function of labor capital, right? So I said that you cannot produce or you cannot invent technology just like that. It takes years and years of research before one can come out with some technology. Likewise, if I'm talking about skilled labor, I just cannot increase the availability of doctors, let's say right now when we are having this COVID, because it takes at least 18 to 20 years for you to produce a doctor. Likewise, if I'm talking about the capital basically is synonymous with investment. Even if I were to invest in factory, if I were to build a factory or to, let's say, take loan from the bank and then start building a factory, it takes time. So therefore, in the short run, the supply of output does not change. What change is the demand for output, because again, the example I was giving in the previous class, if all of a sudden you become pessimistic, let's say that you are thinking that you might get laid off because of COVID scenario, of demand, I will be able to bring down the demand condition and bring down to the level so that my demand matches the supply, and eventually this inflation which I am seeing thanks to the economy heating up, that thing is going to go away. So basically, there are few economists who have spoken about this, and if you were to see what the economists are saying about this particular thing, so the first is uh, the classical school of thought. Now, classical school of thought, this this is the time when basically they started thinking about how to control. So again, what is my objective? The objective is very clear. The objective is I have to minimize my output gap, right? Again, why minimize my output gap? Because without minimizing output gap, I cannot control inflation and unemployment. And therefore, I need to control the output gap. Adam Smith wrote something which found its place because classical school of thought came after Adam Smith, you know. So just hang on, I'm going to explain. So classical school of thought, these things are being actually, these are the economists who for the first times talked about the classical school of thought, and I'm sure that some of you may have heard about the name of this economist, Schumpeter, Robbins, and Hayek, that let the market decide and let the market take care of the problem. If you remember in the previous class, we are saying that if my demand is greater than the supply, let's say if I'm over here and this is my price, this is my quantity, if my demand is more than supply, then what is going to happen? You are going to see the price is going to fall, and that's how the market clears, right? Likewise, if I am over here in this point, let's say I am somewhere here in P2, this is P1. If I am in P2, basically what it is arguing is the at price P low, you have demand much higher than the supply. Therefore, the price is going to go up, and this is going to settle at this point of time where demand is equal to supply. You know, so that is something what the classical school of thought, which are propounded by this economists, namely Hayek, Robbins, and Schumpeter, they were arguing. They were saying, look, you don't have to do anything. If you have an output gap, you just let the economy control that. It's a free market economy, and the economy is going to ensure that the output gap is going to take care by itself, so that it is asymptotically going to go towards zero, you know. So basically, one more time, what the classical school of thought is saying, that if I have a scenario like this, then you just don't do anything. You just let the price go up so much that people start consuming less, because we cannot change the supply in the short run. But what I can do is, by increasing the price, I can ensure that people start consuming less. And if they start consuming less, and as I was saying in one of the previous slide, that the consumption expenditure is the most important component of demand. So if price goes up to that extent that you stop consuming that commodity or service, eventually what is going to happen, the economy as a whole, is you are going to come back to this portion where the output gap is zero. Likewise, if the economy is somewhere here in this portion, let's say now we are kind of facing a recession. As I was telling you guys in the previous class, that because of COVID, the quarterly GDP number, we if we were to compare year to year basis compared to last year, this quarter, our GDP has shrunk by close to 24%, So therefore, we are facing a recession. So if you have a recession kind of scenario, then basically what it tells is you just don't do much. The price will fall to the extent that people will automatically start demanding more, and they will start consuming more, and you will go back to the normal, which is I'm going back to this thing. Okay. So that is what the classical school of thought was saying. Any question on the classical school of thought? Or so just hang on before I complete the entire story, and then you can ask the question. So the classical school of thought was doing well until Great Depression hit the American economy. So as you know, that the Great Depression uh, lasted quite a bit of time, which got started in early 1930, and it continued until middle of 1940s. So the US had something called what is known as Great Depression. Now, one of you, uh, so which actually got started from 1930, it continued till middle of 1940. So basically, what happened was then this guy named John Maynard Keynes, he started criticizing the classical economists. He started saying that, look, if what the classical economists are saying is true, which is you don't do anything, you just sit quiet and let price take care of the problem, in the sense that when you have higher demand, the price goes up, so that eventually demand falls, and when you have low demand, price falls, and eventually demand goes up. If that is the case, and if economy runs that simplistically, we should not have Great Depression, right? Because Great Depression means ideally the price should fall, and to the extent that people start again demanding more goods and services, so demand eventually picks up, and we are back to normal, right? So Keynes observed that during the time of Great Depression, the policy prescription which were stated by these classical economists, namely Hayek, Schumpeter, and Robbins, those things are not working, because if those policy prescription of let the market behave on its own, function properly, that means I shouldn't have an event like Great Depression, is it not? But yet, Keynes said that we have a Great Depression, and it is not something which happened only for 1 or 2 years. As I said, that it started from 1930 and it continued until middle of 1940. So it's a long period of time you have this Great Depression thing going. So Keynes said that means there is something wrong. What the classical guys are saying, that you just let the market take care of the problem, that is not happening. And how market is going to take care of the problem? What the classical guy said, that if the market is heating up, that means the prices are going to rise, which eventually will lead to fall in demand, which means eventually my aggregate demand is going to fall, and this is going to ensure that the output gap is back to zero, right? But likewise, if the prices are falling, which happens during the time of recession, then what is going to happen is demand is going to go up, and which means aggregate demand is going up, because demand going up means consumption is going up. Consumption going up means aggregate demand is going up, which means output is eventually going up. That is something what you expect to see at the time of recession, because all the policymakers, they want to ensure that the level of output should go up. But unfortunately, that was not happening at the time of Great Depression. And therefore, John Maynard Keynes argued that there is some fallacies there with the way classical economists were arguing. And what Keynes proposed, he proposed for the first time so basically this is a case of market failure, right? Because market is not able to ensure that the output gap is going to go back to zero. So this is a case of market failure, and Keynes for the first time started saying that, look, if we are seeing a condition where the market is failing, this calls for a case for government intervention. Are you getting, guys? Any question? So one of the so my question to you is, why you think the classical economist or the classical argument failed? What is the reason? Because it's actually true that once the economy is in recession, price starts falling, and that means eventually the demand should go up. But going by what Great Depression we saw, that is not happening,
Sir?
Yeah.
Is it because wages also fall? So people don't have money to buy goods even if prices are falling.
So the wage part will come, but here we are talking about the aggregate demand, right? But I can always counter argue what you said just now by saying that, okay, let's wage fall, but at the same time price is falling faster, and therefore more number of people are actually buying goods. And even if you look in the context of the Indian economy, there are very few people who are in the organized sector. And at the time of COVID, when prices are falling, without any government intervention, if we were to allow the market to take care, then things are going to go out of control. And I'll tell you why. Because the moment I know that my future is uncertain, my future is bleak, what I'm going to do is, whether I have wage or not, even if I got wage, I'm not going to spend, It's again like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So Keynes, for the first time, argued this is called animal spirit hypothesis. This is what Keynes' logic to classical school of economists were. He's saying, even if the price fall, people are not going to buy if they think their future is uncertain. So no matter how much the wage fall, and even if price is falling faster than the wage is falling, or for that matter, even if you have money in your pocket, you are going to save it for the future because you don't know about the future. And therefore the economy goes only, it's more like a downward spiral for the economy. People start preserving money, they just don't spend money. So for instance, if I tell you that maybe tomorrow or by next week there is going to be a war between India and China, what is the first thing you are going to do? You are going to go to the market, you are going to grab whatever you can, the basic essential, and you are not going to splurge anything, So that is the animal spirit hypothesis, where Keynes is arguing that consumer, all of a sudden, they become pessimistic or optimistic, So optimistic is you start splurging money, and pessimistic means whatever money you have, you don't like to spend money, So these are two other extreme, So whether wage is there or not, if I know that my job is going to go, or some black swan event like war is going to happen, or some bad thing is going to come, the first thing I'm going to do is to drastically cut my consumption. And if you remember the timing of Great Depression, what is so peculiar about that timing between 1930 and mid of 1945? Something was happening during that time. Anyone?
World War II?
Yes.
World War II.
Yeah. So during the time, anyway, during the time of World War or war, people are anyway only two industry which actually did well when people get depressed. One is the alcohol industry, because they want to forget about the real event, and the other is the entertainment industry in the form of movie theaters. So these two industry actually did well at the time of Great Depression. All other industry actually they had to shut down, like something what we are witnessing now in the time of COVID. So Keynes said the only way I can act, because market has totally failed in terms of uplifting the sentiment of the consumer. So the only way I can make the consumer optimistic is I ask for government intervention. And what is government intervention? Ken suggested that you ask government, and this is one of the famous example of if you read his book, you will find he's suggesting that even if the government doesn't have to do anything, the government should start digging up hole in the middle of the road, and then so government employs some people to dig up the hole in the middle of the road, and then start employing another sets of people to again mend the road, and that's how you actually start generating additional income, because the private parties, private players, so there are also people like you and me, so they are not going to invest. So if I ask Reliance that, and if I share this information with Reliance that tomorrow there is going to be a war, so you start investing today, what do you think? The Reliance is going to invest? The answer is no. Therefore, the only party which can invest and who has the power to invest at the time when things are really bad is government. And something similar we are also seeing at this point of time, at the time of COVID, because most of the industry, they are facing downturn. If you look at the long-term trend of, let's say, sales figure of cars, refrigerators, or let's say washing machine, or even air conditioners, so these are called white goods. So if I look into the manufacturer of all these white good items, the industry leader of this part of the segment are going to complain, saying that, look, we are not going to invest now. So when the private parties, they also shy away from investing at the time of when things are not that great. So the only person or the only entity which can invest is the government. So Keynes therefore suggested for government intervention. And why government intervention? Because Keynes wanted to ensure that even if the private entities, even if they are not investing, the government comes and invest, and in the process they create additional employment opportunity. And when you have additional employment opportunity, basically you are giving money at the hand of the poor, money in the hand of the people, and that's how you try to pull up aggregate demand. So that was the Keynes, and that's why he's so famous, because his idea of government should step in and start providing employment opportunities actually worked and actually was responsible for the American economy to come out of the Great Depression. Is it clear? So Keynes, by simply saying that, look, if you let everything in the hand of the market, that is not going to work. You need some additional entity. What is this additional entity? For the first time, Keynes said that let's hope that the government come to the forefront and start investing more in factories and stuff like that, and that will ensure that the economy is picking up. Now, one of the arguments of Keynes was he actually talked about the fiscal side, and I'm going to talk about this. Fiscal side means government expenditure only, right? Because Keynes explicitly did not mention about the Fed. Or the central bank. Now, can anyone tell me what is the difference between the fiscal side and the monetary side? For US, their central bank is known as Federal Reserve. So when Keynes came out with this idea, although he was more proponent of fiscal side, he because as part of the demand management policy, I can have both the monetary side as well as the fiscal side, right? But Keynes actually put more emphasis on the fiscal side. Now let me try to show you that in what way the monetary side is also important. Like as I said, as one of you just now mentioned, the government expenditure and tax. So what happens if government expenditure increases? It creates more employment, right? And if there is more employment, my consumption expenditure goes up because I'm putting money in the hand of poor, or for the money in the hand of the unemployed people. Likewise, if I increase the tax, then what happens? Consumption expenditure actually fall, aggregate demand fall. So at the time of expansion, or when the economy is heating up, you would expect to see the government actually increasing the tax. But at the time of recession, you would expect to see government expenditure going up, and also taxes are coming down, right? Because only using these two methodology, I can give more money in the hand of the people, right? Currency and notes in the hand of the people so that they can start spending more money. So likewise, you can also see central bank or the Reserve Bank of India playing an important role. How? Because central bank, as you were saying, one of you just now said, there are two instruments. One is money supply and the other is rate of interest. Now, when rate of interest goes up, then what happens? Rate of interest goes up means consumption will go up or down. If ROI goes up, does it mean consumption going up or down? What do you think?
Down, sir.
Down. Because why? Because if I have taken a loan, the cost of loan goes up. If I'm trying to invest in certain activities, because the present discounted value of my return is going down because the rate of interest is going up, I'm not going to invest. So all these things, so through monetary policy, I can also control my demand condition. And if you remember, you will find that even at the time of global financial crisis, which happened post 2008, you will see that most of the central banks around the world they have reduced the rate of interest to the extent that even for some countries such as Japan, the real rate of interest actually become negative. So what is the difference between the nominal rate and the real rate of interest? If I nominal rate of interest less inflation is the real rate of interest. So what the Bank of Japan did is they reduced the nominal rate so much so that it is actually became less than the inflation rate, which led to the real rate of interest becoming negative. So all I'm trying to argue using the Keynes idea is when the market fails, when the market is not able to ensure that your this thing your output gap is not getting minimized, then you need the role of government and also to certain extent the role of central banks to prop up the demand in the economy. Is it clear? So all these things happened sometime during early 40s until and once the World War, after the end of the World War II, most of the economy in Europe and in US, North America, they started performing very well. And sometime during 60s, there was another economist who tried to enhance this idea of Keynes. His name is Philip, and I'm sure that you have heard about this Philip curve. So Keynes actually proposed that his full name is A.W. Phillips. So in the year 1958, he came up. So because Keynes actually proposed that, well, you'll have to do government intervention. Phillips said, he started saying that you need also monetary intervention. Let the money supply at the time of recession, let there be money supply, because what he found was an inverse relationship between nominal wage rate and inflation rate. So actually, this is so if the nominal wage rate as inflation rate this is inflation rate with unemployment rate. That's what he did. So the Philip actually said that if my inflation rate goes up, then my unemployment rate is going to fall. Now how? So this pi stands for the inflation rate. So if inflation rate is going up, and as you can understand how inflation rate can go up if central banks start printing more money, So if central banks start printing more money, then the inflation rate will go up, and that is going to bring down unemployment rate. Now, can you guys try to relate this with output gap? Because all we are discussing is this simple thing, that if I am at the time of recession, let's say right now, what should I do to increase my demand? The only way I can increase my demand is I have to go up through this, because this is my demand function. This is my demand function. Because if I'm in year 2020, my demand is low than what is being supplied, I have to increase my demand, and the demand can increase from any one of these factors, C, I, G, X, and M. Now, the way to increase consumption expenditure is either government step in and start providing more money in the hand of the unemployed people, or let's say central bank steps in and they start printing more money. If they start printing more money, basically the industry owners, they will not have any problem in giving more wage, so that is that nominal wage we are talking about. So this is my nominal wage. If nominal wage goes up, then more and more people will be interested in joining, so the unemployment rate will go down. That means more people are going to go to the work, and this thing is going to go up. And also I said that if rate of interest falls, investment expenditure goes up. Why? Because whether you invest or not, it depends upon two things. One is the initial cost of investment, and then because you are investing, let's say you are expecting return for 3 years, and I'm calling this R1, R2 and R3. So if I were to compare the present discounted value So this is my present discounted value of how much I'm going to get from my investment. Technically, this portion should be greater than the initial cost, only then I will invest, right? Now, what happens at the time of the interest going down? This present discounted value of my investment increases. And therefore, when rate of interest goes down, investment also increases. See, are you following? Any question? Or am I moving too fast? Say after you graduate from SLAM, you want to start your some venture. So when you want to start your venture, you have an initial cost, right? Which I'm calling as C, right? And let's say that you are planning to open a restaurant, and this restaurant has got a lifespan of, let's say, 10 years. Or just to make it simpler, let's say that this restaurant has a lifespan of 3 years. So at the end of first year, I'm hoping to get a return R1. At the end of second year, I'm hoping to get a return R2. And at the end of third year, I'm hoping to get a return R3, right? Now, you are investing in 2020. This is the amount of money. Let's say you are spending 10 lakhs rupees to open this restaurant, okay? Now, you are hoping that at the end of the first year, you are going to get back 7 lakhs. At the end of second year, so first year is 2021, second year means 2022, you are going to get 6 lakhs, and 2023, you are going to get, let's say, 5 lakhs. Now, if you were to equate this 10 with 7, I cannot equate because this is a year from now, right? Therefore, I have to discount it with the market rate of interest, meaning that if I were to keep this 10 lakh in any bank deposit for a year, this 10 lakh would give me 10 plus whatever is the market rate of interest. Are you guys getting? So if I were to convert, my future return into today's price, I have to discount it with the, now why I'm discounting it with square? Because this is 2 years from now. And likewise, this I have to discount it to the power 3. Only when, this is called the present discounted value, only when the present discounted value of my future return is greater than my initial cost of setup, which is 10 lakhs. Why I'm giving negative? Because I'm using this money from my pocket. That's why it's negative. Why these are positive? Because I'm expecting to get back the money I have deposited, in the form of doing this business. So only under condition when this portion is greater than equal to this portion, I will invest. Is it clear now? Yeah, Rahil?
So how do you select the rate of return, the return
Yeah,
rate?
So the rate of return is typically the bank rate of interest, because you have the option to put it in the bank.
Okay.
Now, many times what happens is this rate of return can also be flexi rate of return. As you know that when you take loan from the bank, the return can be both fixed and flexi. But
Okay.
over you can get a sense from, let's say, 5 years gilt or 5 years bond or 10 years bond or so, to get an idea about what should be the value of I.
Okay,
So
sir.
is it clear now? So now what happens if I start falling? That means this discounted value of my return is going to get increased, present discounted value. That means this investment is going to be much more lucrative, and therefore I start investing more. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
When central bank they reduce the rate of interest, what happens is rate of interest falls. It means that your present discounted value of future return actually increases, which means investment is going to go up. So all I'm trying to say that at the time of recession, be it government, be it central bank, government will start spending more money. They will cut tax. They will also, central bank is also going to print more money supply. They are going to reduce the interest rate. And that's how they are going to increase the demand so that the output gap eventually becomes zero. Okay. So think about this. I will continue again in the next class with what we are doing.